So, as we begin our conversation today, I wanted to first acknowledge that we are visitors on this historical territory, and we honor the importance of the treaty and our responsibility to uphold the treaty. Inuit, Métis, and First Nation peoples are experiencing houselessness at high rates compared to non-Indigenous people across Turtle Island, including in Edmonton. And so it's really vital that we engage in meaningful conversations and partner with First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people and communities in this work while recognizing and addressing the historic and current systematic history and the current systematic racism that unfortunately continues. After all, we are all treaty people. And we further recognize that this is a land acknowledgement that we have on the side is just that, a land acknowledgement, but it's one step in our reconciliation journey. And I would just really encourage each of you to take a moment during the next week and reflect on what role you have in reconciliation. In order to gain a better understanding about what our presentation is about and why we do the work that we do, we felt it most relevant to first discuss what the cycle of homelessness and housing insecurity can look like. The picture of homelessness in Edmonton is not static. It's important to recognize that for many people, homelessness is fluid and their experience shifts rather than in a static state. And so we really need to consider the entire spectrum that you can see up on the screen of homelessness and housing, as individuals often cycle through different experiences of housing insecurity. And I'm sure most of you would agree that sometimes language can be really fluid. And so to ensure that we're all using the same common language as we move forward, I just wanted to briefly go over some key definitions. So first, homelessness. Homelessness refers to the condition of which an individual, family, or community lacks stable, safe, or permanent appropriate housing and has no means or prospects of means or ability to acquire it. The situation can often arise due to a combination of systematic barriers, societal factors, and personal challenges. And these can include a lack of affordable and suitable housing, financial instability, mental health issues, cognitive or behavioral challenges, physical disabilities, and experience of racism or discrimination. Homelessness is not a choice for most people. Instead, it's often the result of complex and interrelated factors. And this experience of homelessness is generally harmful and uncomfortable, marked by unsafe living conditions, poor health, high levels of stress, and significant emotional distress. So on this slide, you can see where it says supportive and community housing. It's an interchangeable word that's used across Canada. But what that really talks about is provisionally accommodated. So often people who are provisionally accommodated, it's a temporary situation. So the term specifically indicates that these individuals have some form of temporary accommodation, but are not yet in a permanent or stable housing. And then on the left to that, you can see emergency sheltered. An emergency shelter includes those staying in overnight shelters for people who are homeless, and also shelters for people that are experiencing family and domestic violence. Indigenous homelessness both looks and is categorically different from how non-Indigenous people experience homelessness in Canada. The Aboriginal Standing Committee on Housing and Homelessness and Jesse Thistle defines Indigenous homelessness as a human condition and is more than just a lack of structure of habitation. It's defined as a breakdown of relationships, considering the disconnections from healthy relationships through historic displacement, spiritual disconnection, and loss of land, loss of culture, the loss of self. So it's important to highlight that the Métis, Inuit, and First Nation peoples are highly overrepresented when it comes to homelessness and housing insecurity in Edmonton. In fact, 5% of people that live in Edmonton identify as Indigenous. However, the Indigenous population represents over 50% of the folks that are homeless within our community. So now that we've given a little bit of context of homelessness in Edmonton and identifying some common language, I want to talk a little bit about Homeward Trust. So who are we? Well, Homeward Trust is a designated community-based organization for the Government of Alberta and the community entity for the Government of Canada's Reaching Home program in Edmonton. The Red Road Healing Society is the Indigenous community entity for the Government of Canada's Reaching Home program in the community of Edmonton. So we work really closely with our colleagues at Red Road, the Government of Alberta, the City of Edmonton, and all sector service providers on many shared projects and planning initiatives to ensure that there's a collaborative effort in responding to and preventing homelessness. And for Homeward Trust, we play a central role in providing some key services to the homelessness serving sector. And some of these include leading collaborative efforts of various stakeholders to create a cohesive homelessness serving system, to allocate resources, including financial resources, to community programs and projects that have long-term sustainable housing solution and is the foundation for addressing homelessness. We work towards targeted response strategies, which means developing and implementing approaches to managing targeted strategies, such as situations including the relocation of individuals from encampments, problem properties, or to support settlement efforts during a crisis. We work closely with all levels of government, Indigenous organization, service providers, and community groups to really have that cross-sector partnership. And data informs. And so part of the data-driven decision-making is utilizing research to really take a look at outcomes and see how we can move forward together to end homelessness in Edmonton. Sorry, I'm using two screens and I'm having problems with my mouse. So thanks for your patience while I try to flip through there for you. So as we continue to chat about the comprehensive approach, it's really important to share that Homeward Trust actively participates in a variety of leadership groups within the homelessness serving sector to support and drive collective efforts aimed at preventing and ending homelessness. We don't do this work on our own. There is no level of government that can do this work on their own, and there is no sector service provider that can do this work on their own. We all must collectively come together. So the collaborative approach includes, but is not limited to, partnerships, really identifying key stakeholders, and the systems for those that are living in these situations. And that means including folks with lived and living experience. And that way we can collectively come together and focus on housing solutions, outreach, diversion, prevention, programs and services, sector emergency response, shelters, and responding to encampments. We know that there is not one person or one level of government that even wants to try to find solutions on their own. And the more people that come together, the better we are going to be, the better equipped we are going to be able to respond to this growing issue. So I'm sure we would all agree that complex problems such as homelessness requires complex solutions. And that's why Homeward Trust, as a leader in this space, strategically brings together a diversity of wide range of perspectives and expertise internally and externally. This ensures that the decision-making process is both inclusive and well-informed, and it has input from various stakeholders across different levels and different functions. And by fostering a collaborative environment, we are better equipped to tackle challenges more effectively, align our goals with the needs of all stakeholders, and really respond with greater efficiency and impact to the growing homelessness crisis. You can see from the slide some of the puzzle pieces have words in them, like voices of lived experience, all levels of government. But there's also a couple that have question marks on them, because there's never always an answer for us to be able to say somebody shouldn't be at the table or an organization shouldn't be at the table. And so the question marks are really for those people that want to be part of the solution, but maybe don't know how to be part of the solution. And so we leave space in our community for them to be able to come together and be part of the solution with us. So the landscape of our work has transformed dramatically over the past decade, really, even since just from COVID. And so there's been a lot of changes just within our community of Edmonton, with different services providing different levels of responses. And so the way we engage with folks experiencing homelessness today is different than we did pre-COVID. And really, some of it has to do with the complexity of the issue. It's really deepened. Challenges have evolved, and our strategies have had to adapt. So what really is key about this is the diversity of services that are coming together that haven't come together historically to really respond to this increasing complex needs and really responding to those experiencing homelessness. And so, really the pressures of our systems go far beyond just addressing homelessness itself. Homelessness remains a critical issue, but with the more complex and interconnected challenges, it's a little bit harder to be able to really find out root causes and find solutions that work differently for each person. And because these challenges are really deeply rooted in systematic issues, mental health, addiction, chronic health conditions, poverty, and housing affordability, or lack of housing just in general. And so what we're seeing is we're really seeing a web of diverse challenges that require a web of diverse services that are coming together to be able to support individuals on any level. And so one of the gaps that we always try to fill is, how do we ensure that individuals aren't falling through the cracks? And so we are increasingly seeing that homelessness is not an isolated issue, but because it's a symptom of a broader and more entrenched social and economic challenges, we have non-traditional people coming to the table to help be part of the solution. And that's really interesting because, as I mentioned before, everybody has a role to play and not one service is able to address it on their own. And so really that's why we have a collaborative cross-sector approach that brings together such a diversity of stakeholders. And one of the interesting things within the community is that the diversity is just not those of service providers, but unique service providers. And it's really important to recognize those with lived and living experience are part of the solution. And so while we continue to talk about the pressures on our systems, it's also the pressure of the overlapping crisis of those folks that are experiencing homelessness. And, really over the years, we take a look at, are the number of people working in the sector equal or able to effectively respond to the number of people that are homeless? Because unfortunately, homelessness is increasing. So how do we deploy those resources when our resources aren't increasing, but the issue is increasing, right? And so I think really one of the key things is to identify the root causes of homelessness rather than just its symptoms. So we're able to collaborate and seek out solutions that we haven't been able to seek out before. And so that means we need to pivot, we need to adapt, we need to refine, and we need to redefine what we're doing in the sector as a collective and what that looks like, and the importance of really recognizing the challenges that are happening and seeing how we can be the change that community needs, because as I'm sure everybody would agree, as if we continue to do the same thing and we see the same results, we're not going to be able to resolve anything. So we really need to be able to collectively learn from each other, listen to each other, and be there for each other, because this is really hard work. It's really, really hard work that we're doing. And so with that, I'm going to pass things over to Katie, as Katie's going to continue the conversation on how the homelessness serving sector is responding in Edmonton.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Linda. So before I get going, can people see my slides still? Excellent. Okay. Oh, so, like Linda said in the beginning, my name's Katie. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the training coordinator slash specialist for Homeward Trust. So for those of you who are in the sector, you have at the very least gotten an email from me, but you have also probably seen me on your screen or in person for trainings. My portion of the presentation is going to be more so focusing on a little bit more about what the sector is and what makes up the sector that is responding to the crisis of homelessness. And like Linda mentioned, it's a real collaborative effort. So it's not necessarily like Homeward Trust that's responding to it, but talking a little bit more about the programs and the direct efforts that are working towards housing people. Before I deliver any types of presentations like this, I always like kind of to ground ourselves and like center ourselves around what ending homelessness in the community of Edmonton will look like. So when we discuss that and when we talk about it, what we're really sort of striving towards or reaching towards is reaching functional zero. Functional zero is a measurement, which means that it's really like describing a situation where we're able to build a community where when someone does experience homelessness, it's rare, brief, and non-recurring. So it's not that homelessness will be completely eradicated. Unfortunately, people's homes will still burn down. People still may lose their jobs. But when we talk about ending homelessness in Edmonton's community, it means that our community has been built and has been adapted to the point where when someone does experience homelessness, we're able to respond to it as quickly as possible. That experience is rare. It does not last for a long time. It's brief and it's non-recurring. So they're able to be given connection to supports that they need to stay successfully housed for a long period of time. So to do this, there needs to be a focus on both ending current experiences of homelessness and then also preventing future experiences of homelessness. Another way that we like to look at it and that we kind of talk about it is looking at it from the analogy of a healthcare system. So well-functioning healthcare system does not mean that it will prevent anyone from getting sick ever, but it will ensure that when someone does get sick, they are triaged appropriately and receive the supports that they need so their illness does not become a crisis. And our intention in terms of both Homeward Trust, but also the sector in general, we're not trying to replace what other sectors do, and instead just responding to the crisis at hand. So, Homeward Trust has existed, and really like the response as it exists right now has existed since 2008. Back in 2008, there were less than 35 programs, projects, and interventions that were supported by Edmonton's Housing Trust Fund. In current day, there are over 100 programs, projects, and interventions spanning over a number of different agencies that we work with collaboratively. It includes over 300 full-time employee staff working in housing and support programs. At full capacity, it means that we're able to support over 2,000 individuals in those housing programs. And in the next couple of years, we're also going to be able to add over 250 supportive housing beds that those are under development right now. So I share this to kind of frame and sort of acknowledge the fact that the work has continued over the course of more than a decade, and that the scale of the work has really changed from going from 35 projects to where we are right now. So the intention of scaling up and of increasing the amount of programs, the amount of projects, and the amount of like work in this area has really been to meet and reflect the complexity of this work. So the 35 programs, projects, and interventions weren't necessarily able to reach the goal of functional zero. And as we've been learning more and understanding more about what an effective response to homelessness looks like, we've been able to scale up our work. So acknowledging the fact that there are over 100 programs, projects, and interventions, I'm not going to be able to talk about all of them in specifics. I just don't have time, unfortunately, and I wouldn't be able to do all of them justice. But I wanted to provide a little bit of almost like context in terms of like different categories or different ways of looking at the current programs that are offering housing support and working towards ending the people's experiences of homelessness. So one of the first sort of like categories or look at current housing programs is the prevention and diversion space. So prevention and diversion is a strategy to reduce the number of people entering into the homelessness space and really focusing in on housing people as quickly as possible so that they don't end up entrenched in a system or so that they don't, their needs don't sort of become exacerbated by experiencing homelessness for a long period of time. So when we look at prevention, it focuses on helping households preserve their current situation or preserve their current housing situation. And then diversion identifies immediate housing arrangements and connection to services. So currently we have programs in the space such as supported referral work and shelter diversion work that are looking to really focus in on those who need a quick solution, getting them quickly housed, but don't necessarily need longer term or intensive supports. Our housing and support programs are our largest portion or portfolio of housing programs. Housing and support programs provide access to housing as quickly as possible with no readiness requirements, but a focus on stability. So focusing on ensuring that people are able to be successfully housed as quickly as possible without requiring them to jump through any hoops or sort of graduate from any programs. Our housing and support programs offer both housing location assistance and housing stability supports. So they offer support in terms of being able to find a place where someone can sign a lease and move into and actually like have a home or a house for them. And then there's also additional supports that people will be able to access to ensure that they're able to stay successfully and stably housed for a long period of time. So supports that are designed to be able to address whatever barriers or issues it were that cause someone's experience of homelessness, and we're preventing them from resolving their own experience of homelessness. The programs, there are a number of different teams. Some of them specialize in supporting different populations, including Indigenous-led teams that focus on supporting clients and participants who are Indigenous. We have teams who focus on supporting those who are youth, and then those are families, and then a number of other different sort of specializations. There's also short-term site-based support options where someone has a place that they can stay for a short period of time while they're working on accessing more permanent housing options where they're able to stabilize and get a little bit of level of support. Then finally, we have clinical and high intensity programs. Those focus on for people with complex needs, such as like needs around activities associated with daily living, like being able to dress themselves or take care of themselves, feed themselves. We have clinical and supportive housing options for long-term sustainable supports. So for those who might need a longer or more intensive level of supports, we have different teams and housing options for those. We'll talk about supportive housing in a little bit. But to kind of compare and contrast, often the housing and support programs that I mentioned earlier are time limited. So there is a limited amount of time where folks will be able to stay in those programs before they graduate. Whereas some of our clinical and more high intensity services have a longer period of time for their program, or they might go on for an indefinite amount of time. Support services are individualized for each person based upon their needs. And we work in partnership with AHS and other programs and sectors. Again, our work is not to try to focus or try to replace other sectors' work, including health. So instead, we want to focus on working in partnership and contracting out to those who are already experts in those areas. For all of the housing and support programs and all of the programs that I've already discussed, there is a focus and a priority on focusing on those with the most acute needs first, and then also working and specifically housing Indigenous individuals and communities due to the overrepresentation of Indigenous populations and communities in homelessness in Edmonton's community. Okay, so I'm not able to talk about all of the programs and give a spotlight to all of them, but I wanted to kind of narrow in a little bit and be able to talk about a few of them to provide some context and help make things hopefully make a little bit more sense. So one of them from the housing and support programs is the intensive case management team, or intensive case management program. So again, this program provides housing, location, and stability supports. So when someone enters into the intensive case management program, they're given a housing worker that works with them to find a housing option that will be appropriate and sustainable for that person. The client or the program participant signs their own lease. And then once they've moved in, they're also given a new worker typically that works with them to offer that housing stability support. So ensuring that they're able to stay successfully housed for a long period of time and after they have graduated. These programs work with individuals and families experiencing homelessness. Typically, they focus on working with those who have experienced homelessness for a year or more, or those who have experienced 4 periods of homelessness over a 3-year period. The program is designed again for those who need a wide range of supports to stabilize, and those supports are offered typically for up to 12 months. So these are all of the agencies and that we have contracted services out to. So Homeward Trust knows and understands that we can't do this on our own, and that the best response to ending homelessness and addressing homelessness in our community is to contract services out to agencies who are already experts in those fields and who are already experts in that area. So the agencies who have intensive case management teams include Bent Arrow, Bissell Center, Boyle Street Community Services, E4C, George Beatty Services, Hope Mission. We have one internal team at Homeward Trust, Jasper Place Wellness Center, the Mustard Seed, Native Counseling Services of Alberta, and the YMCA. Okay. And then the next program I wanted to sort of highlight or provide a profile of is supportive housing. So supportive housing is a site-based affordable housing that offers on-site supports. These are photos, 2 photos of 2 different sites. The one on the bottom is still under development, and then the one on the top is a slightly newer site that is open that has folks living in it. So supportive housing, when we talk about on-site supports available, it's designed for those who have complex and sometimes co-occurring conditions. So those conditions can include struggling with activities of daily living, again, feeding yourselves, going to the washroom, everything that is kind of associated with like being able to daily live your life, mental health conditions or mental illnesses, substance use, and other vulnerabilities, including other potential physical disabilities, brain injuries, and a number of other ones. So it's just these sites and programs themselves are designed for those in terms of supporting them properly. So residents in supportive housing sites actually sign a lease and pay subsidized rent. So they would live in one of these buildings that is shown on the side. They would pay subsidized rent so that it is affordable housing. And then they're able to receive site supports on the site and in the actual place that they live. Currently, we have 12 existing sites for supportive housing in our community in Edmonton, and 2 more are under development, which will add over 250 new homes to Edmonton's community. So on the top is an example of an existing site that is Hope Terrace, which is in the neighborhood of King Edward Park. It is being operated by Bissell Center. The site and the program have been designed to support those who have FASD. So as an example of the way that the site itself and the program itself have been specifically designed for that population. The site has a sensory room to be able to support those with FASD because of their struggles often with sensory issues. And then the bottom one is an example of a site that is under development. It is in the Holyrood neighborhood, and it will be operated by George Spady Society. Okay, sorry, I know I'm going really fast. I also want to make sure that there's times for questions. So the final sort of category of programs that are connected to our sector or who are part of our sector are the cross-program supports that we offer for clients, and then some cross-program supports that we offer for staff in the sector or for the sector in general. So when we talk about cross-program supports, these are programs or sort of like teams that offer supports to clients regardless of what program that they're in. They offer it based off of need. So as an example, we have a rental assistance program, which is a short-term assistance given to help clients be able to pay their rent. And it's accessible based on, or through a number of different programs that I've discussed already. We also have prevention and stability supports, which is available for recent graduates from some programs, sometimes even after the time that of the program is over. Sometimes folks need just a little bit of temporary and additional support to be able to successfully graduate and move forward with their life. And that is an example. The next one is Find Furnishing Hope, which is a furniture bank that can provide used and sometimes new furniture and other household goods free of charge to clients in the housing program. And the photo on the slide is a photo of Find. And then we have a variety of financial management, cultural, and mental health supports available for clients while they're in the program. Again, looking at it from a focusing on contracting to experts in the field. We don't expect any of our housing program staff to be expert on every single area of life or every single need or issue. So we have programs that are specifically designed to support clients in areas provided by experts in those fields. So, an example of that is a relatively new program called Hearts and Spirit. So Heart Spirit is homeless engagement and reintegration team. And then Spirit is the supportive programming to initiate recovery, inclusion, and transition. That program is operated by an Indigenous-led organization. They work from a holistic approach to provide comprehensive supports, such as mental health support or supporting mental health difficulties, substance abuse problems, and social exclusion to clients that are part of different programs. They also support connections to Indigenous cultures, especially for those who are Indigenous in terms of our clients. And an example of this is they've assisted in clients attending sweat lodge ceremonies as a way of connecting or reconnecting to their Indigenous culture throughout that housing stability process to ensure that that person is really able to stabilize. And again, looking at it from a holistic point of view, being able to connect to the many ways and the many areas that someone might need to stabilize. Okay. And then the last sort of type of program, again, is the cross-program supports for the sector. So we have a landlord relations department within Homeward Trust. They work on developing and maintaining relationships with landlords in the private market sector. The majority of individuals who are housed through the housing and support programs and prevention and diversion are housed with private market landlords. So not necessarily in government run or affordable housing. The majority are housed in with private market landlords, and the landlord relations department really works on developing and maintaining those relationships with those landlords because we know we could not do it without them. And then the last one, this is like my job essentially, is the sector training. So we offer technical training and assistance available to all sector and support staff, which really provides training and other learning opportunities related to their work so that they're able to successfully go about their work and their job. Okay, so with all of that, something that I really wanted to stress, like Linda said, there's been a lot of language changes and a lot of sort of discourse and everything about homelessness in our community and really everywhere. Something that we hear quite common in this space more and more is that we're seeing language saying that we couldn't possibly house people And it's not possible to house them, or we couldn't possibly house them successfully. But throughout the programs that I've kind of discussed, and the projects, the programs, and the interventions, that over 100 of them, since 2009, we have been able to successfully house over 18,000 people, which includes over 1,800 for this year. And the most recent stats show that over 70% of them, depending on the program that they're in, typically remain stably housed at the point of graduation. So if they're in a program that they're going to be graduating from, more than 70% of them remain successfully housed, which is a huge success rate, and really does show that the interventions that we're putting into place do work, and are able to successfully house people. Yeah. Okay. So that is all my slides. This is Linda and myself's email, and then the sort of general contact information for Homeward Trust. I'm wondering if anyone has any questions about anything I talked about or anything that Linda talked about. Yeah. I do have an education degree, so it is ingrained in me to wait for a slightly uncomfortable amount of time to see if there are any questions. So I will do that as a heads up. But if you're more comfortable as well unmuting, feel free to. All right. Well, it is Friday. It is lunchtime. So no worries if there are no questions. Feel free to take down Linda and mine's contact information in case you do have a question that you don't feel comfortable asking in front of the group. We're always available to be reached out to through email, to respond and kind of to any questions or help address any confusion. But yeah, I won't keep people if there are no questions. Yeah, Joanna. Oh. Excellent. Sorry, Joanna raised her hand, but she meant for clapping. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for all of your time, and for if you're part of the sector, for the work that you're doing in the sector, and then if you're not, for coming in and learning a little bit more, to be able to end homelessness in Edmonton. And when we end homelessness in Edmonton, it will be a collaborative effort that will involve not only all of like Homeward Trust, and all the programs I talked about today, but really just everyone in our community being invested in it and wanting to move forward in ending homelessness. Okay, thanks so much, everyone. Take care.